Everyone knows the iconic Spitfire. It's the symbol of Britain's defiance against the Nazi war machine. But what if I told you that the Spitfire, as brilliant as it was, wasn't the weapon that truly saved Britain? What if the key to victory wasn't a sleek fighter plane, but an invisible web of technology that stretched across the British coast? This is the story of a secret weapon that would change warfare forever. A revolutionary system that allowed the Royal Air Force to see the enemy long before the enemy ever knew they were there. The summer of 1940 was one of the most dangerous moments in modern history. France had fallen. The British Army had been evacuated from Dunkirk, but they'd left almost all their heavy equipment behind. Britain stood utterly alone. Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, promised Hitler he'd sweep the Royal Air Force from the sky in a few weeks. That would clear the way for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. And on paper, the odds looked overwhelming. The Luftwaffe was the most powerful and battle-hardened air force in the world. They had more planes, more experienced pilots, and a fearsome reputation. They could throw over 2,500 aircraft into the fight, including the formidable Messerschmitt 109 fighter, which was a match for anything the British had. Against this aerial armada stood RAF Fighter Command. Even with the magnificent Supermarine Spitfire and the rugged Hawker Hurricane, they were critically outnumbered. The head of Fighter Command, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, was a stoic and pragmatic leader. He knew he couldn't afford a simple battle of attrition. Britain could build new planes, but it couldn't replace trained pilots fast enough. If the RAF was just trading plane for plane, pilot for pilot, Britain would lose. The Luftwaffe could attack at any time, anywhere along the coast. Without knowing where the next raid would hit, Dowding would have to keep his fighters in the air on constant patrol, burning precious fuel and exhausting his pilots. So the strategic problem was immense. How could a smaller defensive force counter a larger one that had the element of surprise? How could the RAF be everywhere at once? The answer was it couldn't. It didn't need to be everywhere. It just needed to know exactly where and when to be. The solution wasn't in the sky, but on the ground, in a series of strange, colossal steel towers that dotted the British coastline. The story of Britain's secret weapon starts not with a general, but with a scientist. In 1934, the Air Ministry was worried about rumors of a German death ray. They asked a Scottish physicist, Robert Watson Watt, to see if it was possible. Watson Watt and his assistant, Arnold Wilkins, quickly realized a death ray was science fiction, but they proposed something far more practical, using radio waves for detection. The idea was simple, like an echo. A powerful transmitter sends out a pulse of radio energy. If that pulse hits an airplane, some of it bounces back to a receiver. By measuring the time it took for the echo to return, you could calculate the plane's distance. To hide what it was, they called it radio direction finding, or RDF. We know it today as radar. After a successful test in 1935, the project got a secret green light. A network of radar stations, codenamed Chain Home, began popping up along the south and east coasts of Britain. By the time war broke out in 1939, this electronic fence was largely in place. The Chain Home stations were monumental structures, huge steel transmitter towers, some 360 feet high, broadcast powerful signals across the channel. Nearby, smaller wooden towers held the receiving antennas. Inside darkened rooms, operators, many of them from the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, or WAFs, stared at small screens. A returning echo appeared as a spike or blip. By reading the blip's position, the operator could determine the range of the incoming aircraft. It was revolutionary, the world's first coordinated early warning radar network. But it wasn't perfect. Chain Home couldn't see planes flying below about 1,000 feet, and its accuracy on raid size and altitude was crude. The Germans, who also had radar, knew about the towers, but German intelligence made a critical mistake. They believed the British system was crude and inferior to their own advanced Freya radar. What they didn't understand was that the towers were only one piece of a much larger, more sophisticated puzzle. The real genius of British air defense wasn't just the radar, it was what they did with the information. A blip on a radar screen is just noise. It doesn't tell a pilot where to go. The real challenge was taking the flood of information from the chain home stations, making sense of it, and getting precise instructions to fighter squadrons in minutes. The solution was a complex command and control network called the Dowding System, named after the man who masterminded it. It was the world's first integrated air defense system, a fusion of technology and human brainpower that acted like a giant nationwide nervous system. The invisible web had to evolve, and it did with breathtaking speed. First, a new radar called Chain Home Low, or CHL, was introduced to plug the low-altitude gap. But the real revolution was ground-controlled interception, or GCI. GCI stations had rotating antennas and a new display that looked like a real-time map of the airspace. For the first time, a controller on the ground could see both the enemy bomber and the friendly fighter as two blips on the same screen. The controller could literally talk the pilot through the entire interception. This was paired with another innovation, putting radar inside the aircraft itself. This was airborne interception, or AI radar. The combination of a powerful Bristol Bow fighter night fighter equipped with its own AI radar and guided by a GCI controller proved to be a lethal partnership. By the spring of 1941, this system was inflicting serious losses on the Luftwaffe. But the web didn't just get stronger in defense, it began to reach outwards. As RAF Bomber Command took the fight to Germany, they faced their own navigational nightmares. A 1941 report revealed that only a third of bomber crews were dropping their bombs within 5 miles of the target. To fix this, radar principles were turned into incredible navigational aids. G was a system that let a navigator fix his position using signals from 3 ground stations in Britain. For deeper targets, there was Oboe, which used 2 ground stations to guide a single bomber along a perfect arc, sending a signal at the exact moment to release its bombs. It was incredibly accurate. Finally, there was H2S, the first airborne ground scanning radar. H2S projected a crude map of the ground below onto a screen, allowing navigators to identify coastlines, rivers, and cities even through thick cloud. From a defensive shield, the invisible web had transformed into an offensive spear. When we ask how advanced Britain's Air Force was in World War II, the answer is more complex than just comparing planes. While the Spitfire and Hurricane were world-class fighters, the RAF's true advancement was its revolutionary approach to war. It was the first Air Force to fully integrate technology, command, and strategy into one cohesive system. They understood that it wasn't enough to have advanced aircraft, you had to have an advanced system to control them. The Dowding System was the blueprint for all modern air defense networks. The concept of a layered defense, combining early warning radar, centralized intelligence filtering, and ground-controlled interception, is the foundation of air combat to this day. And the innovations didn't stop there. The cavity magnetron, a British invention from 1940 that made compact, powerful microwave radar possible, not only enabled effective airborne radar, but also led directly to the development of the microwave oven in your kitchen. The RAF of 1940 was a vision of the future. It was a force that used information as a weapon, proving that seeing the enemy was just as important as shooting them down. The battle for Britain wasn't just won by the courage of the few in the cockpit. It was won by the quiet brilliance of the scientists who gave them eyes, and by the thousands of unseen operators in dark rooms along the coast who meticulously pieced together the invisible war, blip by blip. They proved that in modern warfare, The most advanced military isn't always the one with the most planes, but the one that can process information faster and make better decisions than its enemy. So, while the Spitfire will always be the beautiful symbol of Britain's defiance, the true secret to the RAF's advancement was this invisible web of technology. It was a system born of desperation, built in secret, and operated with incredible skill. It not only saved Britain in its darkest hour, but also created the template for modern technological warfare. If you enjoyed this look at the secret history of World War II, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. And let us know in the comments, what other overlooked technologies from the war would you like us to cover next? Thanks for watching.